to tonight's meeting where we're going to be talking about the city's move from at-large elections to district elections. And so tonight we're going to go over just give you some background on that, talk about the mapping tools, and show how you can participate in this process. So first, I would like to introduce myself. My name is LaShonda White, and I work in the city manager's office. I also want to thank a variety of staff, many who are here tonight in the audience, some who are not. So we have staff from our city attorney's office. We have a representative from the city attorney's office, Patrick Seals. Our city clerk's office, Pam Christian, who's the city clerk, along with Jaswara and Sabrina. And we also would like to thank our IT staff who are unseen at the moment, but they are videotaping, as well as KCRT. And we want to thank city manager's office staff, David and Samantha. So thank you all so much for your work. The documents that each of you have tonight should include a PowerPoint presentation. So take notes on that. Jot down any questions that you have as our presenter goes through her presentation. You also have two different maps. One is our neighborhood council map, just in case you aren't familiar with how our neighborhood councils are are situated within the city of Richmond, and that looks like this. And then we have a public participation map, and we have it in English and in Spanish. And the presenter will go over how to utilize this map. But this is a paper map where you can, if you don't want to go and utilize the online mapping tools, you can utilize the paper map to draw your districts or your recommendations for districts for city council areas and submit them to us. And finally, we have a speaker card, a comment card. So as we're going to allow the presenter to go through the entire presentation because we are videotaping, and this videotape will be placed on our city website. So for those who couldn't attend tonight and can't attend the meeting on Monday, we will have it available for people to review. And so we just want to make sure she can get through her entire presentation. So if you have questions or comments, we will have an opportunity at the end of the presentation for you to ask them. But for those who don't feel comfortable, have to leave, please provide your questions and comments on this sheet and we will collect them. So for tonight, you have an agenda. I'm going to, after I finish speaking, I'll introduce our presenter for tonight. She's going to go over the districting process. She's going to talk about public participation and the online mapping tools. We're going to talk about next steps, so what happens after tonight. Then there'll be some discussion questions as well as Q&A. And on the back of your agenda is our timeline so that you can have this for yourself and you know what's coming next and what the process is through January 2020. We have childcare and interpretation services available if anyone needs them. And restrooms are out the lobby door. And so right now, I'm going to turn it over to Shalise Tilton from National Demographics Corporation to present. Thank you, Shalise.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here to assist the City of Richmond throughout this process. Again, my name is Shalise Tilton. I have 25 years experience actually working for a municipality. My education background is in public administration, and it's a pleasure to be here on this side helping cities go through the process and do it in a way that's transparent and inclusive. And to me, it's an exciting process because it's an opportunity. This is one of the few opportunities where citizens can have a direct say on an action, meaning you can submit a map and it will be given equal consideration as to any other map that's submitted. So hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll be encouraged to draw and submit a map for council's consideration. We don't weed out any map. Every map that's submitted gets produced by NDC and it will be in the packet. If you meet the deadline for the next public hearing, then it will be for consideration at the City Council's next public hearing. We'll talk about those timelines. So we're here because of the California Voting Rights Act. It was an act that was enacted in 2002. It's a safeguard law to prevent against voting systems that dilute the voting strength of your protected class voters. So the city received a demand letter claiming that the city's election system, in fact, may serve to dilute the voting strength of protected class voters. So that is the reason why we're here, and my job is to assist the city in its transition. Presently, the city has an at-large election system. This means that all the voters in the city can vote for all the council seats. Some cities have a by-district system. That means all the voters in the city can vote for all the council seats, but the council members have to reside in certain districts. So the city would be divided into 6 districts, and there would be someone residing in each of the 6 districts. But again, with a by-district, all the voters in all the city votes for all the council seats. What the CVRA, and that's the California Voting Rights Act, we'll be calling it CVRA often, so I want you to be familiar with that term. And actually, if you want to read the California Voting Rights Act, you can find it in Election Code section 14025. There's only really about 7 paragraphs to it. It's short, it's relatively easy to understand. There are, of course, some other laws that tag along to it and guide this process, but that's where you could actually read the act if you were interested. The CVRA was actually enacted by the legislation to encourage cities to move from an at-large system to a by-district system. And in fact, in the CVRA, it says that if you have a from-district system where all the voters vote for all the seats, yet the council members live in certain districts, then that qualifies as an at-large system, which is illegal, and they want everyone to move to a by-district system. And you can't have a combination. So you can't say, we'll only have 2 districts in our city, and we'll have 3 council members at large within each of those districts. You cannot do that. So it has to be single-member districts to be qualify as a true by-district system. Cities that have a by-district system are, from that point forward, immune from a lawsuit under the California Voting Rights Act. So that is the only remedy that will prevent future lawsuits from happening. There are other remedies that people will propose, but this is the only one that will prevent a future lawsuit. So the California Voting Rights Act was written based on the Federal Voting Rights Act, but it lowered the bar. So for the Federal Voting Rights Act, you had to fail on 4 different measures. And with the California Voting Rights Act, there only has to be a condition that exists where there's racially polarized voting. And that is defined as, does your protected class group vote as a block? And does your majority vote in a way that's different than the protected class and in a way that defeats the electoral choices of your protected class groups? So the liability is only determined if there's polarized voting. This next slide gives a snapshot of the number of cities that have switched from their at-large systems to by-district systems as a result of the California Voting Rights Act. So just to give you an idea, prior to the California Voting Rights Act becoming into effect, there were only 29 cities that had a system of by-district election system. Now there are over 149 cities that have populations greater than 10,000 that have made the switch to by-district systems. So 1/3 of all those cities with populations over 10,000 are now by-districts, and we're seeing more and more transition as we speak. So there are several that are going through the process. There will be several that will be going through the process. This does not just affect cities, it also affects school districts. It affects any body that is elected, local body that's elected. So we're seeing irrigation districts, water districts, parks districts, hospital districts. So it affects any elected body. Many of you have probably recently heard of the Santa Monica case that was just recently tried. The plaintiff in that case is requesting $22 million for that trial. There was over 13,000 billable hours for that trial. It involved, I think, 4 different law firms. So it's very costly to defend against these lawsuits. So consequently, and also City of Palmdale, City of Santa Clara, those were the only 3 cities that actually went to full trial. The rest ended up settling it somewhere during the process because the costs just got so great. No city has ever been successful through one of these CVRA challenges. Each of the cities that have been sued or threatened to be sued have had to change their election systems. Santa Monica is appealing, as is Santa Clara is appealing. But you can see on the right-hand side of the screen here, we list some of the dollar amounts that cities are paying just to settle. And in many cases, these cities and districts were settling very quickly in the process and paying millions of dollars. So in 2017, the legislature recognized that all these tax dollars were being spent for these costly settlements. So they put a system in place where rather than just receiving a lawsuit, it requires a potential plaintiff to send a demand letter. And that gives the city the opportunity to voluntarily switch and avoid a costly lawsuit. So the City of Richmond has made the decision to avoid the costly lawsuit of trying to defend its election system and make the transition. By doing this, the potential plaintiff's fees are capped at $30,000. So that's the most that if the city completes the process and adopts a map within a prescribed time frame, then the city's liability will be limited to $30,000. So that's where we are today. The time frame is very tight, and it's very difficult because once the city receives a demand letter, they only have 45 days to act on it. And so that's why most of you who follow the city council meetings were probably surprised all of a sudden heard it and bam, they're adopting a resolution of intent to start the process. That's because they only had a certain amount of time to do that. Now there's a 90-day time limit that is ticking away. So we need to have completed the process by mid-January, in order to avoid a lawsuit. Also embedded in the new legislation is a series of public hearings that have to be held within that 90 days. So there's a total of 4 public hearings and then adoption of the ordinance. The first 2 public hearings are just to get input from the public on the composition of the districts. So if we would love to hear from you on what you think your neighborhoods, the boundaries of your neighborhoods, what makes sense for your neighborhoods to be aligned with other neighborhoods, where you think the district lines should be drawn, or what would be sensible for you. That's important for us, both at these community forums and that at the next public hearing, which will be held on November 19th. After the public hearings, we're hoping that folks will start to submit maps, and also my firm will be preparing a couple maps for the council consideration. So when the maps are submitted, we'll be producing them, and we'll be producing demographic data for each of the maps, so that you know if it's equally populated, and we'll talk about equal population in a minute, and you'll be able to see all the demographics for each of the districts that have been drawn for each of the maps. Those maps will be posted on November 26th, and then the council will be talking about those maps at their hearing on December 3rd. Typically what happens on December 3rd is the council will narrow down those maps to some focus maps, maybe 3, 4 focus maps that they like, and then they'll be asking if there's any suggested revisions to those maps. And we're requesting that those revisions for those maps, and we apologize for the tight timeline, it's the legislators that put us in this tight time frame, but we need to have any proposed revisions by December 6th so that the council, we can get them published and posted 7 days in advance for consideration by the council on December 17th. And then they will be adopting the ordinance. The first, in November, we'll have 3 seats that will be adopted by district. There are laws and guidelines that we must follow when we draft the maps. There are both federal laws and there are state laws. So the federal law states there must be equal population. And we must use the federal census data. Well, the last time a census was completed was in 2010. So we will be using 2010 census data in drawing the maps and making sure that each of the district has equal population. So as of 2010, the total population for Richmond was 103,701 people. These are all people, citizens, non-citizens, babies, people of all ages. So if you divide that into 6, each district will have roughly 17,284 people in each district. On all of our tools, that number is listed on the tools. So you know when you're drawing a map and you're trying to achieve that population, then you try to achieve that 17,284 per district. We are allowed to have a little bit of deviation. It doesn't have to be the exact count, but the deviation is small. So your least populated district to your greatest populated district, there can be no more than a 10% 10% difference between the least populated and the highest populated district in your map. And we would flag that if some maps came in and they were not population balanced, we would let the council know that they're not population balanced. They would need to be adjusted if it's possible to adjust. There are other federal voting rights acts, laws that are in place, and those have to do with not diluting the voting strength of your protected class group. Often when you hear that discussed, they're talking about packing or cracking. So you can't draw districts in a way that would take a certain concentrated area of a protected class group and split it up as to dilute its voting strength, or to put all the protected class in one single district so they would only have a say in one district and dilute their strength in any other districts. So it's a balancing act. Also, you cannot draw districts based solely on race. So you can't just solely concentrate on race and draw your districts accordingly. You need to make sure you take into consideration communities of interest. So I'm going to jump over to the right-hand side of the page. The other criteria we must follow is that the district boundaries must be contiguous. So you can't have one section of a district be in one spot and another section. They all need to be contiguous in one solid boundary. We talk about neighborhoods and communities of interest. A community of interest is a neighborhood that shares similar social or economic interests. There are other things that play into communities of interest. And the last is if there's a neighborhood that shares certain social or economic interests and it's possible to keep them united in a single district, then we need to achieve that. Also, following clear, visible boundaries, either man-made boundaries such as streets, railroads, highways, those type of things, or natural boundaries if there's creeks or waterways, or obviously you have some city borders that are intervening in the city. And then compactness is important. It's lesser ranked than the ones above it, but these are ranked in order of priority. So compactness, we try to achieve compactness, meaning we wouldn't bypass one neighborhood to capture another neighborhood if it's going to create a map that is not compact. When we talk about respecting voters' wishes, after all the higher ranked criteria are met, if it's possible to draw a line that doesn't impair council members, then we try to present that option for continuity of office. Often explain that the council members that sit up here also serve on various county, regional, and state boards. And oftentimes it takes many, many years to get a position of leadership on any of those communities and boards. And so if you were to draw all your council members into one district, you would lose all of that influence on those state, regional, and county boards. And so that's often a consideration when we're drawing boundaries, as long as the higher ranking criteria is met. This is a snapshot of the demographics of the city as it existed for the total population as it existed in 2010. And then when you look at the category below it, that's the citizen voting age population. So when the courts are looking at your districts and they're seeing how good of a job you did at not diluting the voting strength of your protected class groups, they'll often look at the citizen voting age population for each of the protected class groups and see that you have a percentage that would boost the voting strength as opposed to if they were just to remain at large. So when we get the maps drawn, we'll compare those. And often what we're looking for are outliers. So if there's a map that's way out of whack with way lower, getting way lower percentages for your protected class groups than the other maps, we would look at that and see if perhaps there was a district that was inadvertently drawn to dilute the voting strength of protected class group. The other information is interesting and helpful in determining your communities of interest, such as language spoken at home, income levels, multi-family housing versus single-family dwellings, also immigration status, housing status. Those types of things help in determining your communities of interest and are helpful. Often you'll start with what you know in your neighborhood, start drawing your map, and then you can look at the demographic data after we produce it. We do provide some tools to assist in drawing maps, and this is a concentration map showing the eligible voters. So those who are 18 years of age, citizens, so they'd be eligible to vote. This is showing the concentrated areas of where those eligible voters reside. So we see a particular concentration of your Latino voters, particularly concentrated between San Pablo and I-580. For your African American community, we see concentrations in Hilltop, in the Iron Triangle, and between Ohio area and I-580. It's the lighter colors and the pink colors that are showing the higher concentrated areas. I know this is very small for you to be able to see. Your Asian American populations are concentrated around the Country Club and Hilltop Village in the north, in the hills of El Sobrante in the east, and along the border with El Cerrito in the south. We see concentrations of the white eligible voters. The non-Hispanic white eligible voters are concentrated along the water south of 580, along the border of El Cerrito and in the hills of El Sobrante. So as I said, the purpose of today, one of the purposes of today is to get input from you on what you believe your neighborhoods are, what neighborhoods should be included in a single district for purposes of effective representation, effective and fair representation. So some of those things when you're talking about communities of interest you can consider are similar levels of income, education, linguistic isolation, school attendance areas, areas around parks or other landmarks, and other common interests. Sometimes there are some non-neighborhood areas such as commercial or industrial areas that perhaps you would like to see them all in one area or have multiple representation of a non-neighborhood area. And then which are your main traffic corridors? Should those be used as boundaries? This is a sample of a compact map, and the reason why I show it is oftentimes when in your mind, I know for me when I first went through this process, I was envisioning a perfectly square map, and then I see that no map has perfect quadrants, and it's because your disbursement of population obviously is highly concentrated in some areas and sparsely concentrated in others. And then we must follow the geography of the census blocks. So when the federal government does the census, they divide the city into census blocks. In your downtown area, they're pretty much perfect square blocks, just as what you consider you could walk around the block. But as you get out of the central area, the configuration of those census blocks, some of them are very unique, but we must follow that geography. So this is important to know if you're going to be using the online mapping tool or even the paper mapping tool. Sometimes you'll wonder why we drew the outlines like we did, and oftentimes the answer is because that's how the federal census drew the boundaries. For the non-neighborhood areas, it's possible for the council to give guiding direction that they want various multiple representation of certain areas. So that's what happened in Pasadena. Colorado Boulevard is where the Rose Parade goes. When they did their districts initially, it was in dire need of redevelopment. And so they wanted each of the districts to touch Colorado Boulevard. So in this case, we would meet all the higher ranked priority, and then if it was possible to achieve a goal of the council to have multiple representation or something similar, then we would achieve that if possible. Central Unified is a school district near Fresno, and what they did, they have large non-populated agriculture area on its west side, so they had each council have a portion of that to deal with issues of flooding and things like that, so each council member is accountable for those areas. So we have possible communities of interest that can help when you're drawing your maps, and I want to thank LaShonda for printing the neighborhood association. That's probably going to be your most useful one. There's also zoning and fire response areas. These maps are available, and we'll try to get them listed on the website as supplemental maps so you can refer to them. And this brings us to public mapping tools. The City Council made the determination to make all tools available to the public. There's an expense involved, and they wanted to have everything possible available for the public to use. I'm going to jump over to the website in a little bit, but this is a snapshot of all of the tools that are available. There are 4 different tools that we have offered on the website. It's easier when we look at the website. I know Sabrina helped design the website, and actually I told her I think her website's going to be a model for us to use for others because she did a really nice job. So these public mapping tools will be available. Did I say Sabrina? Yeah, okay. These are available through the website, and I will be showing you today how to access these tools. This is a snapshot of them. Let me show you what the individual ones are. So the first, you have a one-page mapping kit. That's the large map that was in the back. What we've done is we've taken the map and we've divided it into population units, and in the middle of each population unit, we've identified what the population count is. So you can actually manually draw your map and add up those figures and get to the desired number of 284 per district. So those units are drawn by us. They're to help you in drawing the maps. If you don't like how we drew those population units, just go ahead and draw your map. Try to follow a street and just make a notation what street you followed. If you don't follow these exact borders, let us know what street you followed, and we'll try to match it as best possible as long as it aligns with the federal census block configuration. So each of these units, in some cases, consists of several dozen census blocks just combined into one. I'm going to show you a tool, an online tool, that you'll be able to see this particular map online, but zoom in and all the street names will show up, because I know it's difficult to look at here and know what all the streets are when you're drawing your map. So you can use the online tool to zoom in more closely and see where these boundaries are. If you don't like adding things up by hand, there's an Excel spreadsheet that you can just, after you draw your map, then you can use the Excel spreadsheet to do the calculators. And the way you use that Excel spreadsheet is you have a different map. Looks very similar to that population map, but all of those units, instead of having the population counts in them, they're just simply identified by number, consecutive numbers 1 through 102, I think. So once you draw your map, for example, you can say, okay, when I drew my map, all of the units that were identified as numbers 1 through 10 ended up in my District 6. So you use the Excel spreadsheet to assign them to 6, and it does the calculations for you of both total population and your citizen voting age population. It will make more sense when I show you the tools from the website. And then there's an online tool that I'll be quickly demonstrating to you that will allow you to actually use the same tools that demographers use to draw maps. It's a little bit awkward to use because the software was written in 2010 and it feels like it was written in 2010. But once you get the hang of it, people actually like it and end up submitting several maps. So we encourage you to give it a try, and there's several tutorials. There's one-page reference sheets, and then there's YouTube minute-and-a-half tutorials that walk you through each of the process. So if you're willing to spend just a little time to get up to speed, once you get up to speed, it's actually kind of fun. This is another snapshot of the timeline, and I believe that's the end of the slides. Oh, we can go back to this after. So for purposes of the next public hearing, I want to stress that the timeline to submit your maps is November 21st. And you'll want to get them in. If you're interested in drawing a map, try to reach that deadline, because then you'll see your maps considered from the very beginning of the process. If you submit later, then the next opportunity that the council would be able to see your map is not until December 17th. So you want to be able to get your map in. Would encourage you to get it in before the 21st so that it could be up for consideration. And you can submit any time throughout the process. Or if you want to wait until the first round of maps come out and then find one you like and make suggested tweaks, you could do that as well. And that deadline is going to be December 6th. This concludes this portion of the presentation, the PowerPoint portion of the presentation. I'm going to go ahead and jump, because we're taping this for the website, I'm going to jump now to the website. So you can see where these tools are available, and I'm going to show you just quickly how the tools work. Once we do that, then we can open it up for questions and answers. So let me go to the website quickly here. So the website on districting is found under the city clerk's office page. There's a link from the home page. If you first bring up the Richmond let's see, your website address. Okay, www.ci.richmond.ca.us. Okay, and then there'll be a link to this district elections, or you can navigate going through the city clerk's department to district elections. The useful part for you are going to be are these various tabs that show up. The home screen gives you a background of what we just talked about. The schedule is similar to the timeline. It's the same timeline, just in a little bit different format that we just talked about. Once draft maps are available, it'll be under that draft maps tab. And then the draw a map is where all the tools are. There's some other documents, frequently asked questions, and other documents that might be useful to you as well. But we're going to go to the draw a map. This is where the tools are. Let's see here. Might need some help. Is it?
Just click on it.
Oh, it's up. I'm sorry. I was already there. I didn't realize. So I was waiting for something to happen. So draw a map, we have them numbered out 1 through 4 of the different tools. The first is the paper map tool that most of you have in front of you. That was pretty straightforward, and there's a link to it in English and Spanish. That you just draw your lines, add them up manually. You can even take a picture of it with your cell phone and email it in. Or you can bring it into the city clerk's office. Okay. The other tool is the paper map with an Excel spreadsheet. We talked about that. I'm just going to go ahead and bring up what that looks like. You can see it looks very similar to the one in front of you, but instead of population counts, what you're seeing in each of the districts is that they're all numbered 1 through, I believe it's 102. So what you want to do is sketch it out on here, and then I'm going to take you to the spreadsheet. When you first bring up the spreadsheet, Make sure you enable editing. That's always a frustration. People saying, I'm not able to move around. The first tab at the bottom here is instructions. Next is assignments. So after you've drawn your map, you look and see what number they are ID'd. So say if you drew your map and your District 6 happened to have all the population units that were ID'd, maybe 1 through 15, you would just, in this column, type in 6. For 1 through 15. Then you go to the assignments page, and you can see how good of a job you did at reaching the desired population. I can't get that to switch over. Oh, I'm sorry, the results. The results. I made a mistake. It's the results. So you can see my District 6 column now has some population assigned to it. And I happen to get 15,481. I look to the top of the sheet and it says your ideal population is 17,284. So it's telling me you need to put more in your District 6. Okay? You don't need to use the Excel spreadsheet if that's overwhelming to you. Just use a calculator. But some people like this because they want to look at the citizen voting age population, and that you can't do by calculation. So they'll look at the citizen voting age population, which is the next category under it, and they'll look at the percentages to see how well they're doing at getting keeping neighborhoods together that have similar protected class voters. Okay? All right, so that's that quick snapshot. Let me get back to our draw map. I'm going to skip the online mapping tool. I'm going to go back to that one because I want to show you how you can view the population unit maps online, as I mentioned. And that's the number 4. It's called the interactive map viewer, interactive review map, I'm sorry. When you first open it up, it's going to give you some simple instructions, and read the instructions. They're helpful to help you navigate. I'm going to go ahead and close this out so you can see the screen. What's showing on the screen is actually the same thing that's on the paper maps, but they are the population counts. And the reason why this is very useful is because when you're looking at that paper document, you cannot quite tell where the streets are. So if you zoom in very closely, so I'm just going to do the plus numbers over here, you'll be able to see the street names. And this will be more useful to you when you're drawing your maps. Okay? So I wanted to make sure you knew that that tool is available for you. Also, if you're using the Excel spreadsheet and want the map that has them all ID number 1 through 102, you just deactivate the population counts and activate the unit ID numbers. Same map, just they're all numbered consecutively. Okay? Once the maps start to be produced, they'll all be listed here. So this will be a way you'll be able to view each map that's submitted. This is one way you're going to be able to view each map that's submitted. You can also change the background if you like. If you want to see the satellite imagery, so just like Google Maps, sometimes this is useful. You say, I don't think that's populated. You could zoom in and see, oh, it's industrial, there are buildings there, or, okay? The other thing I want to show you on here, because this is very interesting, I'm going to activate census blocks just to give you an idea of how many census blocks there are. It takes a minute to populate. See all those blue lines? Those are census blocks. So if I were to zoom in, I'm going to reposition this map just a touch. I'm going to zoom in, and once you zoom in very closely, the population numbers of those census blocks will show up. So you can see why we don't give you a map of just all the census blocks and we group them by population unit. But if you don't like the way we've grouped them, you can draw your map just following these census blocks. Or if you've drawn a map and you're just short by a couple hundred, it's good to open up this feature and you can see, oh, I can just add these 2 blocks, it'll give me a couple hundred more people in my district. See, this will be very helpful for you when you're using the maps. Okay? Going back to the website now. I'm going back to draft map, or to draw a map. And now I want to show you the online tool. The online mapping tool has you set up your own account. And the reason why you set up your own account is so you can work on maps in batches. You don't have to complete a whole map in one setting. So you'll set up a user ID and a simple password. The only thing it asks you for when you're setting up your account is it will ask for your email address. We don't use the email address for any other purpose other than the map submissions. It's helpful if we have your email address as well, because then if there's a question on your map, or maybe there's just one slight thing that makes it not legally compliant, we can contact you and ask if it's okay to switch to adjust the line so it makes it legally compliant. I've already set up an account, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up. I have already played around twice with it, so you can see there are 2 maps that I have opened up and started to just a demo for people, but I actually want to open a new plan. So I'm going to open a new plan. It'll give me a blank template. As we go through the process, in addition to seeing this initial plans blank template, you'll see other plans listed there that citizens have decided to share. So when a citizen draws a map, they like it, they want to put it out there for anyone drawing a map to look at, they can share their maps. So you see over time, there will be maps that will be shared by people. And you can look at their maps, and you can use their maps as one of your base maps, or you can use a blank template. For now, there's only the blank template in there. So I'm going to create using the blank template. I'm going to give it a name. It sometimes takes a couple minutes for it to populate. So say I wanted to start drawing my map. So I would just simply say, okay, I'm going to draw a brand new district. We don't have any districts established yet. I'm going to have a brand new district. So I'm going to do some selection. So the selection keys are the ones that are under the words census block. So the one I'm going to choose, I'll show you them all. If I do the arrow, I'm going to be selecting census block by census block. And sometimes that can be very short. These are big census blocks, but you saw how little the census blocks in downtown area. You would not want to do it census block by census block. Okay, I want to go a little quicker. Let me use the circle feature. I'm going to click to start my circle. And if it touches the census block, it's going to highlight it. So you see it doesn't show up as perfect circle because these are some odd-shaped census blocks. So anything that touched that where I drew is going to be included. Now I see I've missed some properties there by doing that. I'm going to use my draw a shape tool. Let me just draw a shape. I'm going to click to change direction. Click to change direction, click again to change direction, and double click to end. Some of you are going to go crazy because you don't know how to end it, and it's the double click. Say I'm done. Okay, that looks like pretty good start for a district. Let me call this my District 6. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm done. Let me do this check mark to say I'm done for now selecting. I can always add later. And I'm going to call it my District 6. Now, if I want colors to show up on my map, I'm going to change the theme of my map. Because I like the maps to show up in colors. I'm going to change it to District ID. Because I want them to be colored. It's a light purple color, but that at least gives me a better idea. And then I can start working on my next district. You can see in the gray right there, the grayed out, it's showing me you've assigned this District 6, but it's giving me a little hint that I'm underpopulated by 38%. It says negative 38. I need to add more to that district. So rather than move on, I may just add some more real quickly here, and we'll see how we're doing to get a little bit closer. So I've added some more. And before I finalize this, I'm going to look at changes. I'm going to open this changes box to see what that did. Okay, so it says that now the changes that I made added 11,000 people, and I'm pretty close. The ideal value is 17,248. The population with my changes is 21. So I have a few too many. I'm slightly over 4.4%. I'm going to go ahead and go with this. So I'm just going to go ahead and accept this for now. Close that box up just to make my page cleaner. And I'm going to do the check mark. This accepts those new changes. And now I have my District 6. I'm sorry, I was reading that wrong. I'm 25% over now. If I look at districts over here, it actually gives you the stats of each of your districts. So you can see District 6. I'm sorry, I was looking wrong. It was 25% over, so I had to take some out. And I'll put them in a new district. How's that? I'll put some of that area in a new district. Let's start a new district. Click on my target's going to be a new district. And let me select my new district. So I'm going to use, again, my freeform shape one. That's the one I end up using the most until I start to refine. And maybe I'll cut some of this off to see if that's going to get us a little bit better numbers. Okay. Let's go ahead and accept that. And let's call it my new District 5. With that change, I can just see this quick snapshot. I'm under by 16% with District 6. I'm under by 21% in District 5. So I need to add more to both of them. But once you get the hang of it, you'll be able to adjust and you build out all of them. And you can look at how well you're doing just by opening these up. When you're ready to submit, you go into plan actions. You can check your plan integrity. You can find any unassigned areas to see if you missed any. It will allow you to zoom in and assign those to a district. Or any non-contiguous areas. It will show you any non-contiguous areas, so you make sure you're compliant. And then when you're all done, you go ahead and submit your plan. If you're not ready to submit it, but you want to share it with the community so it comes on one of those lists, you can share your plan so that others can see it and then make the changes. I'm going back to the website now. Let's see. I don't know if it's going to get me. Just wanted to point out that we will be having another workshop similar to this on November 18th. Actually, I'll go to the PowerPoint that has all of the timelines. Another workshop like this on November 18th, and then maps will be submitted. We'll have the next public hearing on December 3rd. And have another opportunity for 2 additional workshops. And right now, we believe those dates are going to be the 4th and 5th, December 4th and 5th. So that if you're interested in drawing maps, or if you get stuck, you've started to draw maps, if you can come on the 18th, and if you've already that far, or you can come on the 4th and 5th. But again, if you come on the 4th and 5th, your map's not going to be submitted in time for the December 3rd meeting. It would have to be submitted by December 6th for the December 17th. So that concludes my formal part of the presentation. We'll have another, and I'll be happy to answer questions and help people use the tools if you would like to start using the tools today. And is there anything else that you would like to add, LaShonda? Okay. Yeah. So if you have questions, then just let us know, and we'll get the mic to you so that it will be audible for everyone. Okay? All right. Thank you. Any questions? Oh, looks like we do have some questions.
My question is the one on the 14th today and 18th. Is this the same workshop or continue the 18th from the 14th, as well as the 4th and the 5th? So if you come one, you don't come the next one, or you need to come all of those workshops?
It's not a continuation on. It will be very similar, but if you've had a chance to play with the tools and are stuck, it may be worth your while to come. You'll hear some similar presentations, but it won't be. It will be a lot repetitive of what we did today.
But I can add that the meeting on the 4th and the 5th will be different.
The meeting on the 4th and the
than
5th
this one tonight.
Will be different because you'll actually have some maps. And ideally, the council will have identified some focus maps, and then the discussion can focus around those maps, what you like about those maps, if you can see any changes you'd like made to those maps. So that will be, those will be different workshops, yes.
I have two questions. One has to do with the hill communities, neighborhoods, that don't look like they add up to 17,000 people. So how do you come up with contiguous areas to add to that district? And my second question has to do with, well, the neighborhood we're in now, North and East, which is where I live, and it's the largest neighborhood in the city. I don't quite know what the population is, but it seems to me that that neighborhood should not be divided, regardless of, you know, demographic, whatever, because the neighborhood council, you know, will be dealing with neighborhood issues. So it seems like that should be its own thing. And there are probably other neighborhoods like that that should be kept intact.
So those are excellent comments, and what would be helpful for us, you don't need to draw out a full map at all, but you could take one of these maps and draw those neighborhoods that need to be together and just simply make a notation. These neighborhoods should be kept together. Don't worry about adding up population. Don't worry about drawing the other districts. And you can do that, as many of those that you want, submit those, because that's very useful for us. So even if today, if you just penciled out this area should be together, that would be very helpful. As far as the hill area, and it looks like it's going to be difficult for it to be contiguous, yes, we're going to have, thank you, Siri is picking us up. Yes, you're going to have strange looking districts just because of the configuration of the city boundaries. But we will be able to connect it with other populations because you'll have to reach that 17,000. But it'd be helpful to know what, in your mind, thinks would be the best population to align with the hill area. So even if you sketch that out on one of these maps, that would be helpful. Any other questions?
Oh, we need it for the...
They're recording it.
My next question follows what the lady just said about the neighborhood council. Mm-hmm. I don't understand why when we restrict mapping, why can't we also do that at the same time in terms of neighborhood council? Because, you know, now we have 15. So if we have 6 neighborhood council, maybe we should limit, like one of district have 2 neighborhood council, something like that. But the mapping, and because otherwise it doesn't make any sense.
Yes.
So since now we do the mapping district, I think the neighborhood council should remap with the district.
Okay, so I'm actually making a note of your comment because that would be a typical comment of, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like you're saying, ideally, You would like to see a map that's drawn that respects the boundaries of the existing neighborhood associations as much as possible. Is that?
No, that's not what I said.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
What I said after we finish the district map,
Oh,
neighborhood council should allocate to each district. For example, now we have 15. If we said we limit the neighborhood council, each district have 2 neighborhood council, for example.
see.
So then we would move the neighborhood council wherever the within the district, not the neighborhood council first. Do the district map first, then reallocate the neighborhood council per district.
Oh, got it. Okay. Any other questions? I would encourage you to submit a map or just draw on maps what you think neighborhoods should be kept together. That'll be very useful for us and help to get your voice heard of how you'd like to see the maps drawn. It's extremely valuable to get that input. And I want to thank you for being here, for taking your time out. All of us have very busy schedules, but it's an important process, and I think you'll find it very rewarding to be part of the process. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. There's still food, so you can take some to go. Thank you. There's extra maps if people want to take any and pass them out to people in your neighborhood. And if you want to submit a map tonight, we will take it. We have markers if you want to draw on your map. So just let us know. Thank you all.